John Crowley is not only the executive director of the New Jersey Motion Picture and Television Commission, but he's also a two-time Emmy Award-winning showrunner, producer, developer, director, and writer. Yes, he does it all. And he's our guest today on the WBGO Journal. John, thanks for being here.
Doug Doyle, thank you for having me.
What a time for New Jersey in the film industry. Both the upcoming Bruce Springsteen film, Deliver Me From Nowhere, and of course Bob Dylan film, A Complete Unknown, were largely filmed in the Garden State. May 13th, Netflix broke ground to redevelop nearly 300 acres in central New Jersey on the grounds of Fort Monmouth for a massive $848 million new film and TV production facility with 12 sound stages. And coming soon, 1888 Studios in Bayonne with 23 sound stages and a 58-acre production hub, and Newark is becoming a hot destination for films. John, why is all this happening now?
Why is it all happening? By the way, you connected the thread between the Springsteen and Bob Dylan biopics. I have a funny feeling that Adam Sandler sings in Happy Gilmore too. So that would be the trifecta, my friend. We'll have three musical biopics or pictures, I should just say, here in New Jersey. So that's the one. That's the answer to the question I'm looking for. How do we get all this musical talent here in state? But you're absolutely right. I mean, right now is a renaissance in New Jersey in terms of the entertainment industry. Because think about it, if you go back to the beginning of last century, you've got Thomas Edison that invents, the motion picture camera, the Black Maria, right? And so what he was doing is he was charging a tax on all the filmmakers to use his equipment, right? So what happened is they all said, "We got to get out of here. We don't want to spend money on a tax to use a camera." And they ran as far away as they could. And when they hit the Pacific Ocean, that was it. And that's when Hollywood was born. So to me, Doug, the irony is that taxes drove the film industry out of New Jersey, and tax incentives are drawing the industry back here. So I'm just going to ask all your listeners if we can just gather hands and sing "Circle of Life" from Lion King, because it's all come full circle here in New Jersey. Part of this, one of the reasons why we do what we do at the Film Commission in terms of getting production here and telling people about what we do in New Jersey and what's so great about New Jersey and why they should bring their projects to New Jersey is for the jobs. So when people say they want an experienced LA crew or an experienced New York crew, guess what? They get that in New Jersey. We have the largest experienced workforce outside LA or New York is right here in LA or New Jersey. 40% of IATSE and Teamster members live in New Jersey, and they'd much rather get in the car, drive down the parkway, and be to work in 30 minutes as opposed to having to go through a bridge or a tunnel to get, to the set. We had in 2022 about 16,000 different crew hires. 2017, it was about 17,000. Last year, over 30,000 crew hires. We had a fantastic year in 2024. New York was stagnant, LA was down, Georgia production was down, Louisiana and Texas, their production was down. New Jersey was up 37%. And in workforce, in the crew hires rather, and also in what we measure is the qualified spend. And that's the other reason why we do what we do, is that money, when a production comes into state, they don't bring everything with them. They're not bringing groceries or gas or rental cars or hardware like paint and brushes and nuts and bolts and dry cleaning and all that stuff. They are spending money when the production lands in state. They're spending all that money on all those things right here in New Jersey. And we went from $592 million in qualified spend in 2023. In 2024, we're at about $810 million qualified spend. So with that qualified spend and all those jobs, that's why we do what we do. And we just spread the word. Like, why would you want to go anywhere else but New Jersey, when we've got everything you need right here?
Makes so much sense. John, explain the whole tax incentive, picture when it comes to how it helps towns that, like Newark that are welcoming, all kinds of productions.
Yeah, so we have a great tax incentive program here, one of the best in the country, and it's we have a thing called the TMZ, which is the 30-mile zone. That that pin drop, if you will, is at Columbus Circle in New York, and draw a 30-mile radius circle. And so you get Newark and you get Hoboken that falls in that area, Patterson, Jersey City. So we see a lot of production in the north. The Film Commission works really hard at getting production in central and south Jersey. Like you go down Atlantic City, there's great architecture, great variety of locations, great deals in terms of, you're putting your crew up in a hotel. You can get all sorts of fantastic deals for your crew. So we try to get that. We try to get production all throughout the state to do that qualified spend that I talked about. So we spread that money around all through the state. So in the TMZ, in the 30-mile zone, you get a 30% tax incentive. You go outside the circle, it goes to 35%. And why is that? That's to incentivize getting more work in Central and Jersey so that we can put our people to work down there and we can get more money spent. For instance, when you say, what's the benefit when a production gets into town? So when Spielberg was in state back in May, he was down in Cape May, and he had 350 crew members. Each of them was spending about $285 per night on a hotel room. Well, you do the math. I mean, like that's a considerable spend, and that was in the off season. So people were, 8 hotels it took to take all the staff. So that was a considerable amount of money. And then you add on top of that, that all of them at the end of the day were going to get dinner, and they get a per diem for their dinner, which was, I think, $50, $75 per night. Well, all the crew were having meals at local restaurants. So it was a huge boom in that area because of one production. So, and Doug, I directed a film a few years ago, and I was in my town, and we have an empty school building. And I don't have a Spielberg budget. I only had $3 million. But we were paying a daily fee to the school, the property owners. So that was money for them. And then every day my camera department was in the coffee shop, and the owner was saying, John, please don't leave, because every day they come in, your camera department, that's $250 extra that I wasn't counting on that's there. My hardware store was a beneficiary of the production because they needed paint and they needed nuts and bolts and brushes and things like that to build sets. So that was a chunk of money. And in my little town of 5,000 people, we spent about $26,000 in 1 week. That's not bad for a little town. The businesses were ecstatic. That's another reason why we do what we do.
It's fantastic. You mentioned this 30-mile radius, and if you start thinking about, you mentioned the word architecture as well. You start thinking about the old buildings, especially in places like Newark, the wonderful architecture, the old buildings. When I was watching The Joker, I knew all those scenes because all those trucks were outside the WBGO studios. When he was going down the steps, I knew exactly where the Joker was going, and, when that movie was being filmed. But then you have great spaces of land in New Jersey. You have great things like even the Great Falls that you could film something by. You go to the south, you have great farmland. You have, Atlantic City. You have the casinos. There's just about everything you could want in the Garden State when it comes to making a film, and all within that 30-mile radius. That's just another selling point that you're talking about.
We always say on the commission that the incentives are the door opener, right? That's what initially gets the interest of a studio or a network to come to New Jersey to film their project. I think probably number 2 on the list is what you're talking about, which is our wide variety of locations. So you literally can go 1 block in a neighborhood, and you've got a Queen Anne or a Victorian style home on one side of the street, and you go 1 block over and you got a mid-century ranch. You can go from a little tiny Mayberry RFD style town to within a 10-minute drive, you've got a big city. So we double all the time as Washington, D.C. We double all the time as Times Square. We've even doubled as Southeast Asia. We've even doubled as Africa. So there's a huge variety of locations. And again, you can go from the beach to a mountain with snow in 90 minutes, Doug. Like you can't even go cross town over in the city in 90 minutes on some days, right? So that's a huge draw for a studio because they look at it and they go, hey, time is money. And our script has a need for 10 different looks. And New Jersey's one-stop shopping. We can get all that. You can't get this in LA, and I grew up in LA. You can't get this in LA. There's no old architecture in LA. They have a beach and they've got a desert. And by the way, Doug, trivia question. Does New Jersey have a desert?
I guess the answer is probably yes.
The answer is yes. Ding, ding, ding. You win. We have 30 acres in Lacey of sand. It was put in for a film. It's still there. So you can still, if you need a desert scene, we've even got that in New Jersey. So you put that, you've got this wide variety of locations, whatever you need, one-stop shop. You add in the incentives. You add in what we also talked about, our experienced workforce, like the third largest workforce in the United States for entertainment experience, right? You add that, and then you throw on the fact that we have a fantastic infrastructure. So those are permanent jobs. And that's like your grip and electric rental companies that are here. We didn't have cameras in state. Now we've got Airflex and we've got Panasonic and we've got Sony. Those are full-time jobs that are here year-round. We've even got payroll services. And now we've got a couple of lumber mills that specialize in entertainment construction, building sets and things like that, set design construction. You name it, we've got it. And we had a big film expo in May. We're going to do another one next year, I think. And the idea was that we wanted to show the decision makers at the studio and network level, like, hey, whatever your production needs, Jersey's got you covered. So we're turning no's into yeses every day is something we do on the commission side, just messaging out, why would you say no to New Jersey? Tell me, why would you say no? There's zero reason to say no and every reason to come here and bring your TV or film project.
We're going to talk about your career in a moment, but what has changed more in the film industry? Technology is so incredible now these days that you can create scenes, you can create creatures, you can create anything that you want. Has this, in your estimation, been great for the film industry, or does it take away from some of the wonderful parts of filmmaking?
Look, we always ask ourselves the question, can we harness technology to make it work to the betterment of humankind? And without getting too deep dishy, I would just say that the strikes of the last 2 years revolved a lot around the harnessing of technology and AI and CG, computer generated graphics, and all those sort of things. So we can really use them to our benefit, but the strikes were also about making sure that our jobs are protected of our workers, our skilled workers. So I think they hit a balance. I'll leave that to union leadership in the studios to really get into the nuts and bolts of that. But we saw an uptick in our hiring, our crew hirings last year, 37%. So that's good. We love seeing that our New Jersey residents are working on projects that are coming in here, and we're getting a bigger slice of the pie because while everybody else was down across the United States, literally New Jersey was one of the only major states that was up 37% with the amount of production that came in here. So, look, New Jersey's adapting to the rise of technology. So I was just at a location yesterday in Kearney Point that has full-time usage on their stage of what they call the volume. It's a volume LED screen. And, CG artists can create a backdrop and your actors can move around in front of it and they look like they're, on scene when in fact they're on a stage, in Kearney Point. So we have 3 of those in state. We've got all sorts of prop design and construction and set design and construction that utilize 3D printing. Stuff looks fantastic. And I was on a set not too long ago where, it looked like one surface like stone and it wasn't, it was, some other like plastic like material. So we've got a lot of high tech that's moving into the industry and New Jersey's not afraid to adapt it and jump in there and put it to use. And that's another draw for anybody that wants to make their film or TV show in New Jersey. We got it all.
You taught a film and production class at Marist last year. Is it the time for students to get involved in this industry because of New Jersey's, recent uptick in job production?
That's a great question because when I moved to New Jersey 17, 18 years ago, I felt like I was on an island. I felt sort of alone. I thought that the industry was primarily where I grew up, which was in Los Angeles. And over the last 17, 18 years, I've just seen the industry grow and grow and grow and grow. And it feels like there's more of a balance between West and East Coast. Not quite, but it's certainly getting there. So, look, I told my students at Marist, I said, look at doing computer graphics. Look at that side of production because that is definitely growing by leaps and bounds, and the industry needs talented artists to be working at the keyboard as much as you need groups and electricians and makeup and hair, all those sorts of professions, editors. Certainly we've got a tax incentive to bring more post production into the state, and so I see a need on the horizon for more editors. But certainly, if I was young, I'd be looking at the keyboard side of the equation.
Interesting. Was there a film or TV show that John Crowley saw in your younger days that you said, yeah, I want to be a part of this industry?
Easy answer. The answer is yes. And when I found out that my uncle worked on this movie, was like I had fallen into the bucket of gold coins at the end of the rainbow because I would pester him to tell me all these stories of the golden days of working in movies at MGM of all places. So that was The Wizard of Oz. It was The Wizard of Oz. I saw that and I said instantly, this is what I want to do. I want to get into storytelling and move people, with my stories. And as I said, my uncle was a special effects man that did that. So the whole, the house falling on the witch and the tornado, and the trees. Remember the apple trees that were
Sure.
throwing apples at Dorothy and right. So he worked on that movie back in 1938, came out in 39. So I was always pestering him to tell me stories about Clark Gable and Carol Lombard and MGM and all that stuff. So, it was fantastic. And here I am.
You already answered my next question. How many times did you talk to him and pick his brain about that? Because that had to be absolutely fascinating.
I mean, and one of my favorite actors as a kid was Clark Gable. And so my uncle had a money clip and it was engraved to Bobby from Clark. And Clark Gable gave it to him because Gable came in a brand new Duesenberg. And if your listeners have never seen a Duesenberg, go type it up and do a search. A beautiful car, a beautiful piece, a masterpiece of engineering, right? And Clark wanted a license plate frame for the front and the back of the car, and he wanted it, whatever. So he wanted it to be silver. And so my uncle hand carved it with a filigree and all that, and then had it plated, and he did the front and the back. And believe it or not, it took him a day and a half to do this. Can you imagine now? And it was custom made, and he put it on the front of the Duesenberg. And my uncle told me that this is like 1930 something. And Gable then gifted him with the money clip, and in the money clip was $100 bill. And my uncle was like, "This is 1930 something." He goes, "That $100, like you stretched that." He said that lasted forever. And so he spent the $100, but he kept that bill clip for many many years. So pretty cool to hear those sort of stories from somebody that you were so close to that just fed your imagination and made you say, this is definitely what I want to do for a living.
What a great story. You're all about creativity. You helped start so many different projects, both when it comes to films and TV shows. I have to ask you about Impractical Jokers. I mean, it's still going strong. I mean, when you first, were involved in that project for the pilot in season one, did you think it was going to last this long?
Well, okay, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. When I was in college, I had two friends that we used to do some really goofy stuff together. We got a piece of our stationery from our college and we finagled a way on to access to Air Force One. And in the press corps, the president was coming there and we got into the press corps. We had a really cheesy VHS camera. We snuck our way out onto Dodger Stadium, to get access to the clubhouse. So we were doing goofy stuff. I'm only telling you this now because the statute of limitations is long gone, right? So there's no way of coming back at us. But when the guys came around to where I was working at True TV, they had pitched everywhere and everybody said no. But when I looked at their reel, I said, this reminds me of what I was doing with my friends. So if I was doing that and these guys are doing it, you know what? There are people in the audience that are going to watch the show and go, oh, this reminds me of the silly stuff that I do with my friends. So I had a really good inkling that it had the potential to be a hit. And then we worked on their pilot together, and I was showing it to some friends, and people were laughing, and I said yes. But I will tell you, my boss, who I adore, and I think he's a genius, looked at me. It was not his sense of humor, and he said to me, "If this doesn't work, it's your butt." Because he said, "If you want to buy this," he goes, "it's on you." And the first show aired, Doug, and it didn't do well. And the second episode, it didn't do well. And I called my wife one day and I said, I think I'm going to be looking for a new job, because my boss was really clear, like, it's on you if it doesn't work. It wasn't until like the fourth episode where it finally caught. And I think, thank goodness it did, because otherwise I would have been out of a job. And those guys would be out of a job for now 13 years. That's how long it's been around. So I always knew that they were funny, and they're great guys, real sweet guys. And that friendship is something that you can't fake. And I know that the audience, they pick up on that these are authentically friends and authentically funny guys, and they see themselves a little bit in the silliness. So it's probably one of the things I'm most proud of having been associated with. That's for sure.
Yeah, I don't think I that kind of sense of humor is not necessarily my bag either, but that show did work for me and has through the years because of how it, you know, they would do things that we'd like to say to people or just to try, but we don't have the guts to do it. So to have them, to do those pranks are great. I also wanted
You
to
know what
touch.
the original title of the show was, Doug?
No, I
The
don't.
original title was called Mission Uncomfortable. And one of the sort of things that I worked on in developing the show with the four guys was I said, look, so much programming, especially hidden camera shows, are mean spirited. So I said, the goal of this show has got to be that the prank is really on one of you four guys. That's where you can zing each other, to your heart's delight. But it can't be on what we would call the mark. It can't be on the innocent. It's got to come back to you. So that's why the title of the show was originally Mission Uncomfortable. It was all about making them uncomfortable.
You made the right choice. Speaking of choices, what's your choice? What would you rather do if you had just one job to do? Producer, developer, director, or writer?
Oh, oh, I don't know. See, they're all creative, right? And even here at the commission, because my friend said, "Hey, you're leaving production. You're going to become a film commissioner. Is that going to be okay? Are you going to have fun because you've been a writer and a director for so many years?" You find the creativity wherever you are, right? So about being able to find a way to message to the studios and networks effectively, like, you need to come to New Jersey. This is the place to be for your project. That's a creative outpour. You're messaging out to our towns and letting them know all the great things that come along with being a part of production. You're finding a creative way to sort of get that message across. I'm also a police commissioner and a councilman here in New Jersey. So I sort of speak that language to our towns, to our mayors, our council people, our police and fire, because I've been there. I've sat in their seat. I understand it.
Well, it sounds like you find the magic wherever you go.
Well, I mean, this is a great job. Being the film commissioner for the state of New Jersey, it combines two things that I really like doing, which is, as I said, I'm a police commissioner, I'm a councilman in here in New Jersey, and then 30 years of production. And you're combining the two, and then adding into the mix, you're selling a place that I'm really passionate about, that I really love, which is New Jersey. And as I say over and over, why would you say no to New Jersey? We have everything you need. Why would you say no? There's every reason to come here, and to be able to make that my job when I get up every day, finding jobs for other people and getting people to spend money in a place that I love. That's a great gig.
One last question for you. Your involvement with the police, being a councilman, being in the film industry, would you ever write a film that would involve all of those aspects?
And I would, of course, I would film it right here in New Jersey, right? That's
Absolutely,
got
you
to
would.
be the prerequisite. I don't have to go someplace else to double for New Jersey, right?
That's right.
Let me try to. What's a good title for a movie like that? Okay, yes, yeah, yeah. Ah, I like that idea, Doug. I like that idea, and maybe we'll call it like "Having It All in Jersey." That's a good title. I would come see that movie, right? Having it all in New Jersey, because you can have it all in New Jersey. That's our message every day to everybody, whether you are a mayor or a council person or a studio executive or crew member, you can have it all in New Jersey.
We'd all like to have the passion of John Crowley, wouldn't we? John Crowley has been our guest, the executive director of the New Jersey Motion Picture and Television Commission, and things are really booming in the Garden State. He's also a two-time Emmy Award-winning producer, developer, director, and writer, and he's been our guest here on the WBGO Journal. Well, obviously, you're doing an incredible job. I don't have to tell you that. Keep it in Jersey.
Absolutely. We went to go visit the set of Happy Gilmore 2, and Adam Sandler came around to say hello. And he says, what's going on in New Jersey? He goes, everywhere I turn, people are talking about New Jersey. What is going on in New Jersey? So the word's out.